Well, I know this isn't a normal setting for our program Inside a Church, but I will explain a little later on how this today represented a wonderful culmination of a story from my book, Have a Little Faith. Another man who carries a message in his work and is deeply inspired is John Ondrasik from Five for Fighting. He is actually Five for Fighting. His lyrics have inspired people, have inspired heroes, have been used in movies, and we thought, wow, if we could get him inside a studio and have him do a little of that inspiration for us, that would be a great little occurrence, and miracles happen. We're in a church, and we managed to pull it off, and here's what happened. Five for Fighting.
Yeah.
You know, when people don't know, and they hear, oh, you hear that band Five for Fighting, so immediately they assume, let me go look on stage, there must be five of them.
Yes.
So explain the name.
Big hockey guy, as you know, back in the day, when I first got my record deal in the 90s, the label came and said, John, the male singer-songwriter is the kiss of death. You need a band name. It's the age of Lilith Fair. It's boy bands. You need a band name. And I'm like, I was a little annoyed, frankly, and I kind of threw out, I go, well, how about a marketing ploy? And they didn't laugh. So I
laughed.
Well, thank you. I thought it was funny, but I just come from a King game back in the day when McSorley and Probert were doing their dances, and I kind of threw out, well, how about Five for Fighting? And they're like, great. I'm like, you're kidding, right? It's hard to pronounce, doesn't reflect the music. They're like, no, we love it. And to this day, I think people are still confused.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's got me into a lot of hockey games.
Oh, well, hey, and that in and of itself is reason to do something.
Thank you, sir.
I'm tempted to ask a guy who writes songs that actually have meaning, are you a child of the 60s? Because that was the last time I remember people doing that. You seem a little too young to have been affected by that, unless it was in the womb.
Well, born 1965, got the 65 Mustang. So to a guy who writes books with have meaning, I think maybe we're from the same place.
But I can actually remember the 60s, unlike you.
Well, I am a child of the 70s, and I do think that it's kind of the golden age of songwriting. And I grew up on, Joni Mitchell and the Beatles and James Taylor and Billy and Elton, of course, as a piano player. But songs that had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and had a point of view. Usually those are the songs that last, and the title track of the record, Slice, kind of talks about the old days when the whole country was singing the same songs.
Yeah.
How can you be as nice as me and not from the same slice as me? Where do we go from here, my friend? Is this the way our story ends? Hey man, sing me a song. When we were everyone, we were more than a slice of American pie. I can't stop singing along. Can you join in? Come on, for more than just a slice of American pie. Hope so.
Yeah. I love the way it just launches. I felt like I was in a Broadway musical for a moment. I asked a question and you said, well,
It's funny, I actually wrote that song with Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Wicked. And it's funny because he's in his 60s and he really remembers those days, and he writes songs that basically really do permeate the culture and will last forever.
Yeah. John, as I listen to you sing, not only do you have such a beautiful voice, but you have such a strong and facile falsetto, which is a hard thing to maintain as you get older. Now, I'm wondering, did you go through a period of time where your voice was higher when you were singing and you were trying to make it lower because that was, as you were growing up, you want to sound older and a falsetto was it seems like a falsetto is a bad thing when you're younger and a great thing when you're older. Is that true?
I had that kind of sound up there. I admit, I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, a lot of those guys were singing up there. Steve Perry and all those rock singers. Freddie Mercury, I was a huge Queen fan. But yeah, as you get older, it gets harder, especially when you got to do those 6 a.m. morning shows. And like many Major League Baseball players, I got to pop the steroids now and then just to keep the voice going.
Do you like your voice?
When it works, I do. Of course, the grass is always greener, and there's always times you want to be Robert Plant or you want to sing an AC/DC, but the thing I think for me is my voice allows me to express my songs and express the words, and I'll take it. I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. I'm just out to find the better part of me. I'm more than a bird, more than a plane, more than some pretty face beside a train. And it's not easy to be me. When I wrote it, I didn't think it was for me. I was kind of a rock guy, but obviously we got the chance to have that song come out. It was becoming popular when 9/11 occurred, and it was surreal because I was in London on 9/11, and I couldn't get back to the States. And my friends kept calling and said, you know, they're using your song and a lot of this footage with the firefighters and the emergency workers. And I didn't realize till I came back to the States really what the song had become. And then I played the concert for New York, and I kind of saw these big firefighters with 2 beers in each hand, you know, with tears running down their eyes, screaming the lyrics to that song when I was singing it.
Which is often what happens with art. I mean, don't you find that I think Nick Hornby, when we talked to him, said the same thing. You write it one way, but then when you put it out, it belongs in the hands of the people who absorb it, read it, listen to it, and you have to accept that that's just as valid as when you wrote it. You can't lecture people, say, that's not what I meant you to get out of it.
You're exactly right. I think when you put it out there, it's not yours anymore. 100 Years is a perfect example. I wrote that song because I wanted to appreciate my 2-year-old that was sitting on my knee. I never would imagine that it's become like the graduation song that every high school sings. I didn't have that context in my head at all. But when that happens, you're grateful. You're like, wow, that's fantastic. I mean, I always took songs and applied them to my life. Whatever Benny and the Jets meant to Elton John, I had no idea. But it meant something to me in my own way, you know? I'm 15 for a moment, caught in between 10 and 20, and I'm just dreaming, counting the ways to where you are.
What was the first song you wrote?
For a girl, of course.
Yeah.
Love song.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
How old were you?
15.
What was the song
Yeah,
called?
it's called Love Song.
Love Song?
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't have the girl's name in it.
No, I didn't
So
have
at least
a name
it could be
in
interchangeable for the next girl.
I ain't stupid.
Yeah. I, of course, became very acquainted with ALS through the Tuesdays with Morrie experience, and probably have seen more ALS than I want to in my life. Augie Nieto was a very, very successful businessman in the fitness world community, and made hundreds of millions of dollars making equipment that we use in our gyms every day. Picture of health, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and then in his late 40s, suddenly, I think it was on a water skiing trip when he really came to realize that something was wrong, because he kept falling off this water skiing, I think in the Mekong Delta of all places, and went to the doctor and found out, as ALS patients eventually do after you try everything else, you have Lou Gehrig's disease. And here is a guy you would never picture to have that. And in the years that have followed, he has inspired people the same way that Morrie Schwartz did. He has become this beacon of light and hope for people, is raising tens of millions of dollars for ALS research, not to save himself, but to save somebody else in the future, and is applying his business acumen to the organization. So I have more hope for that organization than I do for many, many other charities, because it is being run like a business, and yet can't move, needs help doing everything.
You know, we were talking about looking for inspiration in our lives and in my music. There's no better inspiration than Augie. You know, his spirit, he's basically living my song. You know, he is living 100 years. Talking about appreciating the moment. You know, when you have a very short runway, you appreciate the moment. So I wanted to write a song that kind of told his story and let the world see what we both have seen about this man. Hey yeah, take it any way it goes. Hey yeah, open up your never mind. Open up your mind. Augie Nieto has never been happier. You gotta see to believe. He caught Lou Gehrig rounding third one day. Now he's carrying the whole team. It's not the breaths you take, it's how you breathe. Augie's found what I've been looking for. Augie's found what I've been looking for.
What a beautiful sentence in there about, it's not the breaths you take, it's how you breathe.
I wish I could take credit for it, but that's what Augie says a lot.
Yeah.
And again, it's sometimes it's how you live your life, not how long you live. And when, as you said, when you're in Augie's position, you live every moment to the best you can.
Were you always this open to other people's stories or causes or things like that?
Success came very late for me. I'm one of those 20-year overnight success stories. So I think, people really didn't start hearing my songs until I was in my early 30s. So I think I had an appreciation, number one, how lucky I was, and also maybe a little more context and a little more life under my belt.
Did you ever have a phase or a stretch where you just wrote, ooh, baby, baby, love you, baby, baby, ooh?
Of course, man, it was the 80s.
Any spandex?
No spandex.
You sure?
No spandex.
I'm not gonna find a picture somewhere in your past. You
might see a little hair extension. You might see some of the hair, the total hair dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's ugly and scary, and I'll never be able to live it down.
Well, when you write on the piano?
Mostly. This last record was pretty much a full piano record. I kind of tried to go back to the days of the piano record, in the late 70s, that Billy and Elton were making, and try to have a stylistic record like that. Before that, most of the Five for Fighting records are kind of half and half. Good songs should work on instruments, and that's why I brought the master of guitar to help me out on some of these songs.
By the way, keep it down, okay? Because you're really, I wanted to talk to John, and constantly Greg is jumping in. I mean, as a piano player myself, I love the piano because you can play the whole thing. You don't need an accompanist. You don't need, you want to hear the melody line and the chords, you can do it. The downside is playing piano on stage will never, ever, I don't care how many years we live, will never be as sexy as playing guitar. Bruce Springsteen could never be Bruce Springsteen as a piano player.
No way.
The Stones could never be the band if there were two pianos, up front.
That's right.
And, I know there was one stretch of time, maybe it was the 80s, where they hung pianos around
piano
the
keyboard?
neck, and you played it like that,
It's called the keytar.
Yeah, the keytar? Yeah.
Keep it down. Okay, okay. That's enough out of you, Greg. Talks forever.
A lot of times, frankly, if you have a hit, they'll want your song for the film. And then there's times when they'll come to you and want you to write for the film. That's what I tend to enjoy more. The Blind Side was interesting because Chances was floating around for a few potential films. And when they came to me, they said, well, here's this kind of little film, but it's a sports film. And they told me about the story, of a woman kind of basically taking in this black kid, raising him and his realizing his dream. And I'm like, man, that really fits what Chances is all about. Chances are when said and done, who'll be the lucky ones who make it all the way? Though you say I could be your answer, well, nothing lasts forever, no matter how it feels today. And chances are we'll find a new equation, and chances roll away from me. Chances are all they hope to be.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, John, so much. What
Thanks,
a pleasure to hear you guys play and get your message. And please keep writing songs that have both music and lyrics that we want to listen to, because it's a joy.
Thank you, Mitch.
It's so fitting. As a writer, you tend to look for moments that speak to you of either irony or emotion, and it seems so fitting that the first snowfall of our season came last night, and it's so windy and rainy outside, and we are inside this church, and nothing is dripping, and nothing is falling on us. The wind is not disappearing up through the hole. And we can actually sit here in shirt sleeves. And those members here of the congregation know far better than I how hard it often is in the wintertime and has been to even sit inside your own church without being bundled up and have to wear heavy coats. And here we are in our own shirts and sweaters in the middle of winter. And that's just an amazing, amazing thing as a result of incredible, incredible love and effort and generosity from really around the world. I made Henry that promise a year ago. I said, you will not go through another Christmas. If I got to empty my own bank account, you will not go through another Christmas having to build a plastic tent inside your own church. And so I hope once and for all, Henry, that plastic has been put away and there's no more. This is a sanctuary, not there, not a tent, but right here. Can I get an organ, please?
We're grateful to God for the author taking the time to come by and sit down and spend a little time getting to know what's going on in this building that people said should be condemned. It's often like we are. People look on the outside and they see how raggedy, how torn down, how old and dilapidated we may appear. But they don't stop to consider, if I invest in, if I put my hand to, what can I do to restore rather than condemn? The Lord does it to us all the time.
They even kill, for they are all his life. So that's why I say we need to pray more every day.
This is what used to be outside. This 2 weeks ago. That hole where a human being can go inside it, okay? That's what used to be. And then the same part of the roof now looks like this. And thanks to Mark Mendelson for taking that picture. And I hesitate to hold this up because it's so ugly. But as you know, this is what that used to look like. This. Rotted away, decayed, giant hole where you can go and hide, see the stars at night. Convertibles are good for cars. It's not for churches, But now that this same hole is now solid plaster all the way up there, and I'm going to go up there and take that little wrapping off and reveal what will now be in the place of that hole forever, and that is the names of people who chose to help us and showed what the spirit of goodwill and faith in God is all about. And so they will now permanently be looking down on the good members of this church as a reminder of what people can do when they pull together. Well, you really do have to have a little faith up here, I got to tell you.
We need a drum roll. Mitch, wait. Drum roll, please. Drum roll. Drum roll. There you
Thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of you here.